right. Well, everyone, welcome. And today we're going to talk about CPNs. This will be, I think I want to make this somewhat brief. This topic gets, I've presented this to a number of rooms, back when we were in person, and I got lots of blank stares like, well, I won't say what I thought, but what are you talking about? So I want to try to put this together as best I can. And then the expectation is if there are additional questions, we can, follow up one-on-one or some way like that. So just keep that in mind. But what the heck is a CPN? CPN, otherwise known as a credit privacy number, is somewhat it's a synthetic ID. And let's go ahead, I think, April, and flip the slide. This is a video that we can't share the sound with, brought to us by Experian. But imagine you're driving up through a drive-through, and you've got identification, you've got credit cards, debit cards, social security numbers, etc. You can simply drive through, pick these things up, and you can see it on the slide for X dollars. And so that's kind of what a CPN is. It's largely bits and pieces of data that mostly come from data breaches, and they're put together to form these new synthetic identities. Think of something like Frankenstein, and we'll get to that a little bit more, but kind of in your mind have this Frankenstein concept, or this bits and pieces of different things put together to form this new Frankenstein. So let's flip the slide, please. This continues to be a little dated, but it's the best data we've got available right now. In 2018, you probably remember there were data breaches, massive data breaches of companies. Facebook, Equifax, and Target are the biggest named companies that were part of this breach. And if you look at the slide, you'll see just how much data was actually stolen. And we think of those massive entities, and those three massive entities that were affected formed about 1% of the entire amount of data that was breached worldwide, across during the year of 2018. Again, there'll be some more data coming out hopefully somewhat soon, but it's kind of scary to think of those big companies. They were barely a drop in the bucket of all the data that was stolen and made available to companies that started doing what these companies creating these CPNs are doing. So just again, trying to think of Frankenstein. This is where all the bits and pieces of data are coming from, all over the place. You see it all over the world. Bits and pieces of data are going to be coming and being made available to our applicants, or to your applicants, in the form of identification that can theoretically, frankly, it can and will cause a problem with your screening process. So, ironically enough, just a couple days ago, this was reported. T-Mobile had a massive data breach. 100 million customers. They got every possible piece of data they could get. They even got the phones, and I can't remember what it's kind of like the MAC address, or the social security number, if you will, of the phone, which my understanding is that means they can clone the phone, clone the identity, etc. So don't know how large this will be in the breaches of 2021, but 100 million customers is a lot of customers whose every bit of their data has it's out there. It's out there for those to take bits and pieces of and create a new identity with. So here we talk about what exactly is a synthetic identity. And so again, thinking about that Frankenstein piece, and bits and pieces, if we could show this as kind of a puzzle, think of the social security number, a name, a date of birth, addresses, phone numbers, previous addresses, middle names. There's just lots of bits and pieces that again come to form these new identities. And the problem with these new identities is that when they come to a screening company, typically what happens is it just comes back as a no record found, which happens, enough. Sorry, happens enough that it becomes part of life. But more and more, especially during COVID, it's really become a thing we're seeing across the board. And we'll get to some kind of case study information in a little bit about just about how they've affected clients and those involved in testing of the system. Hey, look at that. We got a definition for it, which I will simply read. Synthetic identity theft is a type of fraud in which a criminal combines real, most of the time it is stolen, and fake information, which is purchased from, there's actually sellers of this data, to create a new identity, which is used to open fraudulent accounts and make fraudulent purchases. What you'll find if you start to look into this is if you're in the realm of about $50,000 or less, this CPN use, you can buy a car, you can buy a boat, you can rent a house, an apartment, condo, anything else that's I'm missing that's in that realm of about $50,000 or less. These numbers work, and they work well. The idea is that, let's say that we want to create a CPN, and so you go and apply for something, and you don't get it, and then you start to build. You go to Credit Karma or one of those reporting agencies, and you you have it tracked, and you just wait, and sooner or later, after a few months, it starts to create what appears to be a legitimate credit file. And again, this is sort of hard to, well, at least it is for me to sort of understand and or talk about, or explain maybe on a webinar. But you've now got a credit file that belongs to no one. There are companies out there that are also selling the ability for you to become an authorized user. And let's say, for example, this credit file has no credit score. There are companies out there that you can actually go to and say, well, I want to have a credit score of, you pick the number, and that credit score, you pay whatever amount of money they're asking for them to add those two files to your credit file that you just purchased from them. So this is completely illegal. Excuse me, but again, it's happening. It's happening all over the place. And now you've got the identity of a person that doesn't exist that you're using as your own. And you can imagine if you spend about 5 seconds, what you could do with that information. New car, new house. You think of it, you've got it. So yeah, anybody have any questions during this? We can ask them. If not, we can wait till the end. It's wish this was more real time where we could ask questions back and forth and talk, but it's not. So guess what? Again, as I said, it's a federal crime. So they are being used. We're seeing it all the time. And we're going to get to a case study here of what they actually look like here shortly. It might be the next slide. I can't remember, but let's go for it. So these are actual reports. Of course, you can see that most of it has been removed or redacted. But anyhow, these are reports from the use of a live CPN. So we've got 7 total trades. A trade line, for example, is any kind of credit. Could be a credit card, could be a student loan, could be any kind of a note loan, could be a mortgage, could be any kind of financial transaction between you and a creditor that's being reported to the credit bureau. And so in this case, we've got 7 total trades, and current trades are 7. That means they're all rated positively by the companies that own those accounts to the bureau. Now, this is where you get to where you need to be looking at inquiries. 48 inquiries, and inquiries in the last 6 months, 48. That's an outrageous number of inquiries. An inquiry simply means that someone is looking for credit. They are, in this case, they're applying to try to drive up the score and the pieces associated with it, with making this seem to be a legitimate credit file. So keep that number in line. 48. They've applied for credit 48 times in 6 months. Let's move to the next slide, please. Now, this is a sample. Actually, this is real, but this is you're seeing authorized users. So this person has gone out and paid money to be an authorized user on someone's credit card. Now, you might wonder, well, how's that happen? So this company or these companies are actually going out and approaching people with fantastic credit, offering, because they know they're not going to miss payments on their accounts. They're offering them fees or a dollar amount to let them use their credit files, their specific accounts, to sell to other individuals to help them build a fake credit profile. And so what you see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 authorized users, and then eventually this person was able to secure their own individual credit line. I think it was a credit card. Thank you. So all these inquiries, 42 in the last 60 days. That just, if you ever see that there's a problem, doesn't matter what's going on. There's something going on. You see that many inquiries. But what the categories we saw in these inquiries were screening companies, looking for car loans, looking for loans in general. Excuse me, looking for home mortgages, and also looking for cell phones. Again, trying to create basically in front of your eyes, if you will, a completely new identity, just leaving their old one behind in most cases. So again, you note that recent inquiries alert 42 in the last 60 days. That's an insane again amount of inquiries for 2 years. The inquiries show for 2 years, but again, that's a lot. And you see that file had been being used since June of 2019. This was, I believe, about 2 months later when we got this file. We had a client ran a report, and this is what showed up. So again, just this is what's happening. They're being used, and there's no way to stop. There hasn't been a way to stop CPNs from being used. Rental housing, auto loans, loans in general, cell phones, and trying to get home loans. This is a kind of a I don't know what the right word is, a bunch of screenshots from institutions, and I use that word very loosely, and others that are teaching you how to build a CPN. You know, that legitimately you can go out and search the internet. I would caution you to be prepared for lots of things popping up about CPNs if you start to search for them. But you should do it. You should, no matter what, you should do it and learn what they are. Some of these are pretty interesting. Some of them are kind of funny, and some of them, like this gentleman down at the bottom here, he's attempting to promote this legitimate business that couldn't possibly be legitimate unless felonies are legitimate things you can do. So what we want to talk to you is a solution, and we have partnered with a company, which, let's go ahead and flip the slide. And the company is called True and Verified. And at True and Verified, what we do are stop the use of CPNs. It's almost like pre-screening before pre-screening. And so that's kind of where what we want to talk about. If you can imagine knowing that 15%, one of our bigger testers was able to curb 15% in the first 2 months of applicants attempting to use fraudulent information before they could apply. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I saw a question pop up. What was that?
So, Mike, the question initially was, what are CPNs? And then Jim chimed in and said it's identity theft by another name. So we did let them know that it was credit privacy numbers.
Okay, it's kind of identity theft, but it's not really identity theft at all. It's building an identity with bits and pieces. Oftentimes, the social security piece, a lot of these agencies and companies, if you will, are suggesting that you find a younger family member that's been provided a social security number and use that number. But I mean, that's theft. But it gets really tricky how to really explain it. But again, it's if you think of Frankenstein, it's Frankenstein where you're getting all these different bits and pieces and putting it together to form a new identity rather than a new Frankenstein. Just this is the guy who was helping us test the process. Again, in 2 months, I had to redo these numbers a number of times because it didn't make sense to me. There's no way it was 15%. Sure enough, it was 15% of her applicants those first few months. It was about a year ago today that was taking place. So who's got questions?
Mike, there is a question. It says, how can you identify an authorized user on the credit report? How is it shown differently from an individual?
It's very easy to see an authorized user. It literally says authorized user on the credit file itself. Does that help answer the question?
Yes.
Okay,
I
good.
don't see any additional questions at this time, but if you do have your questions, please place them in the chat. Daniel is asking, how do we have access to see the actual credit report with NTN tenant screening?
Your account is set up that way, or not set up that way. If you're not seeing it, you need to update your account, or with any other screening company for that matter. You just need to update your account.
How will a CPN show up in the NTN report?
So a CPN, the use of a CPN will show up if we were to go back a few slides. That was the use of a CPN in a credit report, or excuse me, in a credit report in general. There's no way. What we found is there's no way that a screening company is able to identify beforehand, at least, that a CPN is being used. So we started digging around, researching, planning, etc., trying to find a way to stop their use before they even got to a screening company. And so that's kind of where we're at now. But these sample pieces of these reports, again, these are live reports that were in use. That's what it looked like. All those inquiries, all those authorized users, etc. That's from a live report.
Thanks, Mike. The next question is, would a longer look back into their history help?
If they're using, so if they've created this new identity, and usually these are months old, there's not going to be any real history. There could be, if you've got somebody using successfully using a CPN, theoretically successfully using it, there could be a look back. That's a good question, but there's just no history, so there's nothing to look back on, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Mike. Can you explain a little bit more about how NTN works?
So NTN is a screening company that does background checks, just like lots of our other a lot of our other competitors. And True and Verified is a company put together to stop or identify the use of CPNs before they would get to, say, NTN for background checks.
how does NTN differ from your typical screening company?
But easiest way to think about this is if you assume that all data that screening companies have is the same, it's not, but let's assume it is for the easiest way to understand or distinguish us between anyone else is our NTN review process. And what that is it is specifically designed if you've got an eviction match, because remember, evictions are matched by name only. So we actually go through, imagine if you will, John Smith, and you've got, there's 50,000 John Smiths in the country, and you get 15 pages of, hey, you go figure it out yourself. Is this John Smith? These evictions or these criminal records, you're John Smith. So what the review process does at how we operate is that those pieces of data are verified, meaning we're putting human eyes on the information. We're confirming whether or not, number one, it's your applicant, and number two, it's reportable in the state the applicant's applying it. Same, same thing with criminal records. Again, criminal records are matched by name and date of birth. In some cases, some states, name and year of birth. So we've got to do research. We don't just do what we call data dumping. Here, you go figure it out yourself. That's the biggest difference between us and NTN. That's easy to talk about when we're assuming data is all the same.
Thanks, Mike. Larry is asking, so would we have to run Sure and Verify to pre-screen before the NTN check?
So my suggestion would be yes, absolutely. You could have, there's a number of ways to do that. You could have the applicant go to True and Verified and do it themselves. You could create a process where we can connect the dots. We can connect the dots with any screening company, really. But my suggestion would be yes. If they can't, the idea is that if they can't pass and authenticate themselves, then you don't want them applying anyway. No. I just saw that question pop up. True and Verified has nothing to do with NTN. Did we get them all?
Thanks, Mike. Yes, that's all the questions that have come in.
Awesome. So as we start to launch real time, we wanted to offer this special. You'll get a link to the sign up process if you'd like to do that. Also, a link to my calendar as well as my email address is there on screen. If you want some more information, etc. Love to talk to you about it. Again, the CPN thing is kind of hard to wrap our brains around until you see it. And it's even harder to wrap our brains around if we let somebody in our property and we're now sitting here going, oh, it makes sense now. And so I understand both scenarios. And I've talked to folks that have in fact done both of these things. So it's getting worse out there in terms of the prevalence of CPNs being used. So again, we just want to help folks stop them before they're even able to apply at your property.
Thanks, Mike. We've dropped the email into the chat. So if anyone is interested in connecting with True and Verify to learn more, to get started, to find out how they can help you, feel free to email sales@trueandverify.com.
Folks, if there's no more questions, I appreciate you stopping by, and we'll talk to you again next time. Is there a question I just missed?
Yes. Daniel wanted to confirm that the applicant would go through True and Verified first and then NTN.
Yeah, it certainly can be set up that way. And we can talk about that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.